Hi, Peter. I'm
Hey,
Hi. I'm going to spotlight you here.
all right.
I'm going to stop sharing this and I want to just get right into talking to you actually. I know I told you it was the wrong time, but I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm doing this all by myself. I'm such a big girl doing
All
Zoom
right. I'm just gonna
all
tone down my light here.
I'm going to spotlight you. All right, everybody. I'm going to get back into that boring ankle talk shortly, but I want to make sure that we had time to talk to our one of my favorite humans on the planet. This is Peter Twist. Anybody that's been in PT or rehab in the past, I was trying to figure out how long it's been since I first spoke to you, and it was 20 years.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah, easily. I would probably like when you think of it, I'd say, oh yeah, that was 9 or 10. But I think you're correct, and it's great to see you today. I appreciate joining you.
Oh, I just love talking to you. I have so many pages of notes to get to, so that's why I kind of stopped my ankle talk. I'm like, we'll get to that later because
All
I don't
right.
want to run out of time. So, typically, for people that are joining, we have 26 people that are here. We do these webinars with Dr. McMakin, and we talk about microcurrent, and she's
Yes.
off lecturing and doing all the wonderful things that she does. But part of what I've brought to the table with FSM is a lot of assessment, a lot of treatment, and a lot of exercise rehabilitation to help people once they've gotten out of pain, once they've rehabilitated from wherever they've need to get them moving. My mantra ever since I got into this business 20 years ago was to get people moving better. And I think that's probably been, when I think about you and all the courses that you've taught and all the people that you've helped, that's been kind of what you've been doing as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
Yeah, no,
that's
absolutely. Well, way back when we said train movement, not muscle, even if we're putting 20 pounds of muscle on an athlete. And there's the classic Nike original slogan, just do it. And I think we'd all agree today, based on society and inactivity and worsening levels of health and fitness and mental well-being and cancer and heart disease, everything, that anything that gets someone moving is a good thing. My heart says that, but my brain says, more in line with what you said, no, don't just do it, because we know someone moving who hasn't been injured yet, well, they can have five outcomes. One is no outcome. One is acute pain, injury, and one is dysfunction. And they might get a little bit of results. They might get exceptional results. So it's really how you move, the quality of your movement, and leveraging the human system with how the body and brain best expresses movement skill. Then you're set up for life. This is our human vehicle. So
I
the
love that.
quality of movement, the thinking of our most important skill to do. So right in parallel with you from day one.
You were so far ahead of your time. Um, I and you don't I don't think we realized how far ahead of your time you actually were until I looked back at. So it's funny, I know this is a podcast, but we also have YouTube video, and so I try to always like verbally explain things. um but this is one of my favorite manuals. This is my Twist Accelerate Sport Performance Certification Manual.
Wow.
So, and it's in fantastic shape because throughout the years and back in the early 2000s, I was young and green and keen, and I really wanted to work with athletes. Like that was really where my passion lied. And so, I think I was telling you all the people that I could hook my hands onto and learn from. That's who I wanted to hitch my cart to.
Good
So,
for you.
it was you and Mark Lindsay and Ken Kanakin and Andre Benoit and all those people that had really kind of it seemed like it was unique approaches to movement. And 20 years later, I'm still working with athletes, but I'm also working with, the senior citizen who doesn't want to go in a wheelchair. And I'm using a lot of these principles even still. So one of the things that is in my little manual that, again, I think was so crucial and pivotal, and it is really still what encompasses my work with FSM and without it, was the brakes application.
Yes,
And
yes.
right at the very top of your pyramid and the way that you were training us was balance. And I did my thesis in college on some hip stuff, but our group that did the balance training recovered not only faster, but had longer lasting results. So is that still something that, I mean, I follow you, I know what you want, but can you talk a little bit about how you had that breaks paradigm and maybe it's a little different or?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's that's a through line. That's been a through line. Of course, the methodology evolves, and it's so great when, I like to say nothing happens in the body alone, and this is our human system. And so we kind of learn more integrated sciences, and it's fun to try and reverse engineer from how all the sciences together talk together during movement or different physical demands. Such forth that all of 100% of training with a healthy client that I advise is to keep them in a cognitive state, meaning the brain's always solving the puzzle to figure out the exercise every inch. Training isn't about doing 100 reps, it's about finding how to make doing few reps difficult. So it's how do we make every inch of every rep as difficult as possible. Now, I don't mean the sort of the fitness industry standard of sweat and fatigue and crush clients. Life crushes our clients. We build them up always. But every second of every drill, every inch of every rep, how do we get max brain computations and actually utilize exercise to build brain cells, rewire, and communicate with the body more accurately and timely, and then train the body to move. So strength, balance, movement, and core. Those I believe are the four pillar attributes of all expressions of human movement when we're up on our feet and when we're on Earth inside gravity. And we want to move around in 3D. That can be lunging to garden at a slow tempo, and that can be skiing down a double black mountain. But we see strength, balance, movement, core. And we know from research that when we integrate those through line for all exercises, so if I'm training you to improve, I'm going to keep you in a cognitive state using those four variables to make sure that your brain, you have to be present in the moment. So I don't know what all the TVs are doing at fitness health clubs and so on. That's saying like I dislike this activity so much I need to dissociate from it. Right. And my brain's not even present listening and feeling how I'm moving. So that's to improve you. We can get max muscle, fascia, brain, and skill adaptations. But now it's time to perform. Maybe you're in competition. Now we want it to be autonomic and something you don't have to think about in the most efficient way. And that might be something as simple as using, our arms as levers. And when we're in a training cognitively to improve, I'm using long hand pathways with loaded at slow tempo away from the body. But now I want to perform. I'm going to keep a short lever at a higher tempo. So that I use a skill that I have to express the best output. So two totally different situations. But yes, strength, balance, movement, core, those are four attributes that we aim to build. They're present in every rep of every movement. Interestingly, especially with balance, and we know as strength, each provides an overload variable for the other three. So at any time in an exercise, yes, we're building all four, but we might say in this exercise, now we're going to utilize balance in a different way so that we can build more strength, reactive strength, etc. Or we're going to use more neurally complex movement to tie the other three in together. So we have more core, more muscle activation. So they're both an attribute and an overload variable when we want them to be.
My brain is already, I feel like I have to stand up and like make some room out. Um, so when a lot of us are listening to the podcast are therapists, PTs, chiropractors,
Yes.
and a lot of us were kind of force fed this idea that, first you need a joint to be healthy in order, and then you incorporate the exercise and the movement at the end. And
Yes.
to me, that's always felt really inorganic.
Mhm.
So I've loved the fact that in the last 20 years, we've really moved away from immobilizing.
Yes.
We're not casting nearly the amount that we used to. Kids are even post-operatively, we're getting out of braces and crutches and getting joints and muscles to move, getting neural sensation back to the area. Um, one of the one of the biggest shifts that I've seen is rice versus meth. And um, I love being Canadian. I love that all this research is coming out of Canada right now.
Yes.
Yeah, but we see, rice, rest, ice, compression, elevation. We have this new acronym. Anybody that's taken my course, I sing the praises. We're all doing meth right now, and we're doing movement, elevation, traction, and heat. So movement has come back to the forefront of the very first thing that we're doing, even in acute injuries, which has been, to me, it seems right. We're all supposed to move. And I know like a lot of us cut our teeth working with athletes, but it's anybody. I think it's our right to move. And I love that you've added the being cognitive of the movement. Um, Short story here. I'm a runner. I love running. When I first got back into running, it was headphones with massive amounts of music, and I wanted to run on the road or on a trail of asphalt because I didn't want to have to think about running.
Yes. Yes.
That is so sad. It is so sad. Now my favorite runs are me with I do have my watch in case something goes wrong and I need to call for something, but me and my dog. And I have a highly reactive German Shepherd, so I need to be present for her to make sure that we feel connected. And it's funny, I run faster, more efficiently, without as much fatigue when I don't have the noise.
Good for you. And I totally living for those in your community. And thank you for all you're doing for helping people heal and improve, and your passion for the field, and connecting here with Kim. And I'm so grateful to join you. But I live in Vancouver at the foot of three mountains, and over time, I grew up in Ontario playing every single North American structured team and individual sport, and then came out here and dropped them all, did my master's in coaching science, sports sciences, and picked up skiing and snowshoeing and hiking and trail running. So the mountains are really the main reason that active people live here. And so sure, I'll play I'll play some gospel folk music running. I'll play some thrash metal running through the rainstorm, getting that energy. And sometimes, you and I could go for a walk, a hike, a run, and have a nice walk and talk. Man, I write a lot, so everybody probably sits more than we need to. So any meeting, any social fun, rather than sitting on a patio, we're going to go walk in the forest. But my most valuable still is, as you say, being grounded and being present solo in solitude, except for maybe a friendly four-legged friend with us that adds to that. And I think we start to understand that movement can be healing and empowering in many different ways. And, I'll say, if it's someone's faith, that's great, but, expanding beyond a specific faith, it is the true mind, body, spirit of movement. And in there, just listening, having given us the opportunity to just be and be present and not be distracted. A lot of people can't handle being with themselves and they want to be distracted from their thoughts. But just to be present in that moment, in that environment. Of course, the forest and nature is thriving and alive despite humans. It's very restorative and powerful, and we do we're open to that, that's a healthful energy. The mushrooms and the tree roots are communicating below our feet, but on our feet, from a proprioception standpoint, of course, we're made to move. We have millions of more sensors and receptors, as you know, at the bottom of our feet. We mistake and think they're on our butts, so we sit on our butts more, but they're on our feet. You know, our brain, above thinking, which is what we're doing here, above communicating, our brain is most custom made for movement. It is its ultimate function, and we keep stripping that away. So movement is the key. And one of the keys for movement, when you do, circling back, I'm great at integrating 4 or 5 stories, but always circling back to the original point, which was you in the forest or out running, getting off pavement, undulated trails where you need to think, cognitively be present, but taking away your music some of the time. Right. Because I think that's one of the keys to dynamic movement is just listening. You know, sometimes I run, it sounds like I have like 2-foot-long clown feet from the circus, and it's just, right? And then but I want my landing to be silent and land quiet. You know, so with our athletes in our training centers, that's the time we turn off the music and we're just going to listen and have each individual listen, so we can really learn load management, not from a volume management standpoint, but from loading our body mass and maybe a weight that we're using into the body, our body mass into the ground. Is it quiet? Do we have full force absorption with our muscle and our fascia and so on? So getting the music off and listening, I think, is one of our top teachers for ourselves.
One of my favorite, you had so many tools and gadgets. I'm thinking back to this one Twist Accelerate course back in 2000. There was wobble boards, and I remember this course clearly because I was the only female in the group. And, you know, back in 2000, going into, you know, these training programs, there's a lot of alpha male.
Very sport oriented at that time, right? That was the initial, those accelerate and then accelerate graduated quickly into athletic strength, sport balance, and then also an integrated movement course. Those were modernizing sport performance, but also introducing functional training to the world. There was other people doing bits of functional training, but that name wasn't bantered around by anyone. And these happen to be the first certification courses, the first opportunity for people to learn that methodology and training paradigm, training style. But it was the athletic oriented people that kind of resonated with it first. And so I imagine that it was quite male dominant from that coaching world. So good for you being in there and leading the way, I'm sure.
Well, you know, I tried. I think it's like anything. Once you feel something so deeply connected in your heart and soul that this is going to make a difference with not just the athletes, but the senior citizen, like I said, that's doing whatever they can do to not go into a walker, not go into a wheelchair, for the stroke patient that's recovering. I think it's really important, and you've always done such a great job of how we're speaking to our clients and to our patients, and you're doing such a phenomenal job. You know, I'll put all of Peter's Instagram stuff, but if you follow his Instagram, it's so positive. And I think the way that we speak to patients, and especially in this phase of when they're learning how to put their feet underneath them again and how to stand properly, that it's empowering and it's positive. Do you have any ways that you speak to your clients to keep things on the positive, especially for those people who are in pain or going through that return to play where there's so much anxiety of, are they going to come back? Are they ever going to be able to do this again?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting you bring that up, and I thank you for doing it, because in the new certification courses, I have a learning pathway plan with 4 specialty areas, 4 courses in each 20 books, 20 certification courses. So we'll have our third launch by the end of July.
Okay.
I'll have the 20th done before I'm 150 years old. But every doesn't matter the specific topic. Of course, there is rehabilitation and sports medicine. There's mental well-being. There's youth physical literacy, but a lot on brain training and sport performance, functional training. Every course has a chapter on what I call positive coaching. And you know, there's certainly times I have athletes and clients, they really do need a bit of a kick in the butt. They need to be challenged. But there's certain quiet voices and respectful ways that really leave a strong impression with them. And that comes with a bit of coaching experience. But you know what, I like to assure clients, to direct to your question on positive coaching, which is the coaching version of positive psychology and neuroscience and how our brain best adapts. And, you know, and the social emotional acumen from a leadership with connecting with folks, having them trust you in that rehab, recover and perform, the three pillars you're on. From the rehab standpoint, wow, is that trust, you know, ever important? So I make sure they know, number one, that I have their back. Anything we do is to help them improve. They can trust that 100%. I reassure them they're right on time, you know, and even if it's been an arduous journey and they might have failed or had people fail them or just not narrowed to the right solution yet by the time they get to you, Kim. This is their journey. This is each of our journeys. We're all right on time. Each of us is like in our life, like I live my life trying to be more present and trying to leave each moment and the people in it better than when I showed up to them. Mm-hmm. That's my number one goal, you know, leave each person and each moment, even those micro moments like buying a coffee at a coffee shop. Am I exiting, am I leaving that moment and the people in it better than when I showed up? And, you know, sometimes I fail, lots of times I'm aware and I do that pretty good. And then people reciprocate. And so it's the client's understanding it's a reciprocal relationship. So how they respond is kind of how I coach them. But I assure us we're all, I'm in the front row of a movie theater right now. I'm in the front seat. This is my life. I'm soaking it up. We're each doing that, you know. So there's some things in my past I wish went differently. There's some things current I wish I was further ahead. But in truth, I'm right on time because this is my journey. This is my life. And we just, you know, to have that mindset, get them to feel great. This is their moment. They're right on time. The most powerful thing, though, is which comes easily through exercise with healthy clients, and especially that strength, balance, movement core, which is to make every inch of every rep difficult. So people are failing. One of the most powerful things of exercise. We fail, then we learn how to do it. We fail, we adapt, we improve. We fail, we get better physical and neural attributes and can do it. So we get, sounds like something you'd say at an elementary school, but I would say it to a 30-year-old pro athlete. You get that I can do it attitude. And that's transferable to everything in life, right? You know, we know two people will start something, they're both going to fail. One of them quits because it's confirmation they can't, and the other one understands it's failure is part of long-term success and learning and growth. So I get them into that I can do it attitude, and then I give them some things, and if they are injured, I give them some safe challenges that I know they're not going to be able to do, that are purposeful, so they are gaining benefits that they need from it. They're going to fail, that I know I can quickly achieve, that they can graduate through. I want them to trust they're going to get better. They're going to get better. Their injured area and how that integrates with the body may have some time to go, and we need nature along the way too. But there's other ways I can get them into that cycle. That's number one. And yeah, and then just, you know, really things that should be across society as no-brainers. basic threshold things. Be positive, respectful, kind, gracious, bring good energy, those type of things. How I believe everybody in society should be treating everybody.
Yes.
So that's part of positive coaching, I think.
I think, there's so many things to unpack with what you said. A lot of the people listening and watching are seeing really complex pain patients. FSM is one of those tools that is a tool. And Dr. McMakin 2 weeks ago had said something really important, is that it's not an end all be all. No modality is in isolation the best tool. A lot of us as practitioners use, whether it's ultrasound or microcurrent, adjusting, manual tissue soft, whatever, they're all tools. Everybody is unique. We have to find, within our scope of practice, what works the best for us as practitioners, what works the best for the patient. But I think the number one thing we can do for all clients and patients, regardless of their health and ability, is to give them some power in their process. And exercise and movement is, to me, it has been the most influential, powerful tool to give them control over a situation that they've probably not had control over ever, whether it's somebody who's had a chronic illness, or an athlete that was taken out during a playoff game and is potentially about to lose their career. There's that vulnerability. And if you can give them some of that power back by giving them homework that will set them up for success, that, they can hopefully do and adhere to. And I try to do that with my patients, to make it fun, to make it challenging, to make it rewarding, because once they do achieve those steps and they come in, I've seen such a drastic turnaround with patients. They're like, and before I can even get out my clipboard or my laptop to take notes, they're like, Kim, you've got to see what I can do now. And you see that joy restored to their face.
Yeah.
And it's just giving them, to me, a little bit of control of the situation.
Yeah, that control is important, and having that joy in there. And I appreciate a lot of people circled up here together, especially if we have patients and clients managing chronic pain. I respect that's probably one of the most difficult things, but usually more movement is better than less movement for managing chronic pain, let alone solving it. But from a control standpoint, really, I'm writing a certification course right now on mental well-being within a trainer, coach, physical therapist scope of practice. So not a psychotherapist and all the other specialties that may do sit-down therapy, but this is all movement-based, and all the things that are within our control that affect our physical ability, our holistic health, our mental well-being, our emotions, our perspective, the lens we see through, our self-talk, our mood, all those things. There's just so many things within our control that a general person can learn to do, and practitioners, it would be within their scope of practice. And I say that allows us to own the process. Want to own the process, quarterback my health, and have control. The best control I love is trying to get someone interested in full spectrum and really look at them. I've learned from athletes that may be a little less coachable, a little bit less bought in. When they get injured, well, now they're fully bought in, and they'll start to learn or listen to their body a little bit more. But the key is, whatever my ability and physical function and so on and is here, as when we have an injury, well, we step back. Now this is my starting line because I'm already here. Am I going to get better, worse, or stay the same? Oh, now I'm injured and I can do less as well, and that exacerbates it. Now I'm down here, and it's like I got to put all this time in as an athlete to heal and rehab and recover just to get back to where I used to be. So from a prevention standpoint, although this is valuable, it's not allowing me to experience this better or move ahead or move up. So I'm really aware, you know, I jump down mountain walls, skiing double blacks a day before I'm supposed to go move around speaking somewhere. So I'll take risks, but there are things that I believe I have enough control. And, you know, I want to be able to keep moving up, but I'm really aware of, I'm not willing to do things where I'm going to get injured, where that risk increases beyond what my threshold is, because I really don't want to be here, although I really value the folks doing that. And I've had a couple of health wrinkles that I had to iron out. And from that, I adopted a survive to thrive. So get this is on the control. And if our patients that'll buy into this, I know we might have motor vehicle accidents and people that are, you know, getting some type of compensation and they don't want to go back to work and they're just trying to milk being here as long as possible. And they might not be candidates. Maybe they can shift, maybe not. But those that will be, let's say, coachable and motivated and that want to get back well and full, it's a survive to thrive philosophy. You know,
I love that.
We're all of us on this get together. We've all had difficulty. We've all had challenge, probably some intense, probably some horrific things. And we've had loss, we've had trauma, you know, we've had failures, we've had things imposed on us, we've made mistakes, all of us. And so, you know, the key is, are we a survivor? Well, that's something to be quietly proud of, for sure. You know, but do we define ourselves that way, or are we a thriver? Are we going to move to thrive? So I know when my clients and athletes, if they're willing and they're here, and then something happens, their health or injury, and now they're here, well, they're going to do things with everyone's leadership on this call to get back. And although the protocol and methodology and program may change, they're doing things that step them back to return. And if they just keep doing good things, they do this. So when you're down here is a lot better opportunity to springboard to here than it is when you're already here, if that makes sense.
That's a very interesting, yes.
You just have to be willing to keep going. You're already in the groove. You've got rhythm, you got momentum. You're doing good stuff that advantages you to get back to here. Just keep doing it. Just keep doing some of that. So this is the control. It's a great opportunity to change someone's trajectory and then coach them to keep going.
I think that's a really important concept to remember for the therapists and the doctors and everybody who's listening here as a care provider. I mean, I'm at the point in my career where I won't take people after the first appointment that I have that won't adhere to some sort of responsibility or change at home. It would weigh too heavily on me when people wouldn't get better. And I would rack my brain thinking, why are they not improving? Why do they still have pain? And they wouldn't make any changes. So they were trying to dump all the control and power onto my lap. And that's just not the way it works. We had a chat a few months ago about, do we call patients or do we call them clients? And there was an interesting psychologist that said the word patient typically denotes they have no control. There is a team of doctors giving them treatment and therapy, and they are at their mercy. But when you use the word client, it seems to be more of a symbiotic relationship. So whoever comes in to see me, I try to ask them one of the first questions, even before I delve too far into their history, especially for the chronic complicated pain patients, is, what do you hope to gain from seeing me? And they're like, but I have all this pain, but I have this. I'm like, oh, I know that, but how do you think I can help you? And if their answers is they just want to come in and lay on a table for an hour twice a week, I'm not your girl. You know, we have to work together. So, you know, and I think with those of us working with athletes, you do have that compliance, you do have that motivation. I think that's why I loved working with them so early on in my career, is because, they checked so many boxes. They were healthy, they had a good diet, they typically were sleeping, they would listen to me. And then I see more chronic pain patients, and I'm dealing with the fact that they sit down for 12 hours a day. They don't have any exercise. They don't drink water. They have a terrible diet. They have high stress, and they're unwilling to make all those other changes. And to talk a little bit about, the word recovery has been such a hot word in the past, 5 years, how people are recovering, whether it's athletic recovery or what are some of your favorite recovery things? I mean, not just be hydrated and get a good sleep. Do you have any supplements or vitamins that you typically are liking these days? Is there, aside from like mindful meditation, like anything like that you can throw at us, please help.
Yeah, from a supplement standpoint, and right or wrong, I eat I eat a lot of, when I eat food, I'm eating superfood, super nutrient dense. And then there's a percentage of that I just don't care. But I don't eat much food, sort of middle class food, let's call it. I'm either eating Haagen-Dazs because it's ice cream and it's great ice cream. It's a high quality, crappy food, let's call it, the best of the worst. Or I'm putting 20 vegetables and, omega-3 and collagen and carrot and beet juice into a Vitamix. From a supplementation standpoint, I focus a lot, maybe my personal journey, and maybe from just listening to the world and news and politics and social media. I focus a lot on sort of a brain matrix group of supplements for brain health and cognition, with aging, with past. I've had about 10 concussions in my past, which everyone has already figured out. And I've had some radiation to my brain and things like that I had to iron out. And with aging and toxic world and so on. So I'm really focused on not only brain health, but this impacts our social emotional skills as well. How we show up for folks, joint health, and the sort of the sub ingredients leading to NAC, which affects my whole system and my resiliency and my restorative capabilities, immune system, and so on. But I have a full spectrum group of supplementation that I take. I did take a look at, it's back when you were taking that Accelerate course and the breaks, which those don't know, that's balance, reactivity, agility. I snuck K in there for quickness, and ES applied to both explosive speed, but also eccentric strength. And the breaks acronym was great because it reminds us, we teach athletes how to stop before we teach them how to accelerate. And there's a lot of training methods that come from that breaks acronym. But when we look at that time period, I was also teaching nutrition and macro, micros, loading up for all-day tournaments with 3 or 4 matches, and how do we recover and so on that. But in going through some staying curious and always seeking to understand and being a lifelong learner, seeing people get sicker, you start to look at different things. And I kind of lifted the hood. It'd be like if our car has a flat tire, well, we put air into it. Do we want to lift the hood and look at the engine at the same time, see what's going on? So I lifted the hood of our food supply system and factory farming. There may be vegetarians and vegans, which I respect. I can get behind that for your health and the earth. I do eat some meat myself. I have a husky wolf dog that I cook meat for. But I won't buy meat from a factory farm. Although we're eating a bit of meat, it's a small percentage of our diet, and it's a major percentage of the world's diet. that's our most intimate relationship. We're taking food and something that was living, and then we're integrating it with our cells inside our body. But that's, we're bringing torture responses into our body. You can hear it in society. Our soil depletion, our food is evidenced to be more nutrient lean than it used to be, even our healthy choices. So that comes back to, I believe it is a time where supplementation is unfortunately more needed for health maintenance and restoration and so on. So I tend to have, what I recommend is folks to settle in on what are their go-to staples on a daily and weekly basis, for their brain, their joints, their immune system, their function. And then in specific situations, you do have an ankle injury, you have a chronic pain, you have an ACL injury, or you have an Ironman that you're ramping up for and recovering from. So each chapter through the year, there may be some specific supplementation that you may not continue year after year, week after week, but it's kind of your go-to. So have your staples. That's what you believe in 365 to operate as a happy, healthy human being. And then here's your situation specific supplementation that you may have for that, say, quarter of the year or something like that.
That's fantastic advice. And I think you talked about something so important is, I think so many of us want that formula. We want that diet. We want that eating plan. We want that pill. We want that something that's going to make us feel better. And we're throwing so much information at our bodies instead of stopping and listening to our bodies. And I had a great rheumatologist. I had some weird blood work come back, and she was looking at it and she's like, I'd like you to try eating this and this, but just seeing how you feel on that. And I thought, wow, how interesting. Instead of just giving me a prescription, she was giving me some options to try, but she wanted me to really see how I felt on it. So I don't need a food sensitivity test to tell me that I don't do well eating gluten in North America. I lived in Switzerland for 8 years and I could eat whatever I wanted there. The soil was different. The cows were different. The bread was different. It was all different. So I think sometimes we want that formula, but we have to listen to our bodies. Am I training for a race? Do I need to eat more? Do I feel sluggish after? I say this on almost every podcast. It was one of my favorite quotes growing up. My dad always said, and it was a little heavy handed at the time, but he said, listen, you've got one mouth and 2 ears for a reason. And I'd sit there like, okay, I have to be quiet. But I'm trying to, one of my biggest things in the last, 5 years, especially throughout COVID, is listening to not only my body, but listening to just trying to listen in general a bit more to everybody. I know throughout COVID, you've really changed your life. You went from 80 flights to not 80 flights, and you wrote so much content. So I want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about these new courses. I'm super interested in the fascial course. We have a lot of like biotensegrity folks listening. So I'd like you to talk a little bit about that if you could.
Absolutely. And I'll just springboard or transition from your comment on correlating how you feel.
Right.
How am I thinking? How am I feeling? I can, for those that do like to keep a log or a day timer or a journal, so that's probably your most important summary. What did I do this day? From how much sleep, how I spent my day, how much movement, and of course the food and supplementation. And then how did I feel through that day and the next day? And of course, a one-time thing, you can't pick up much, but you can see trends and start to correlate. When I eat these foods or do these activities or don't do these, this is how I feel, this is how I think. And that's that's still science-based. That's customized and curated for you individually, really, to get in tune to that. So I love you're doing that for yourself and your patients. The course that you reference is the Art of Fascial Lines Training. And, you know, that's really looking at our brain, our muscle, our fascia, and thinking of the body and how we train it, not in muscles and muscle groups, but in both movement patterns and in shapes. And then kind of reverse engineering from the characteristics of fascia. And in exercises, can we design the movement pattern that our body, our feet and hands are moving through, the tempo, using things like 4-phase reps where there's not a concentric, eccentric, positive, negative, you know, but at 2 junctures, there's something we can do there. You know, we can couple between the positive, negative phase of the rep explosively. We can pause, hold for 4 seconds and impose things. But looking at the characteristics of fascia, I believe everything in the body, like nothing happens in isolation, everything's integrated, and everything's trainable. And so when we understand the characteristics, then we can just take a step backwards and go, what can we do to train to leverage those characteristics to kind of force them to come to the table and participate, and can we get them to improve? So the fascial lines course looks a lot at, it's called the art of fascial line training, building your body armor. If you think of wearing an armor, and in society on average, we don't have, this isn't about physique and taking a selfie, that's okay, but it's, if we're taking selfies, we want to do it every day, not 365, not just one and done, and we're never looked at. So this is not about appearance, but interestingly, all of the training methods that I put together, people do whatever their impression is of an appearance improvement that they're marketed to believe that is the right way to go. They do achieve that as a byproduct. It's not physique training style. It's not bodybuilding training style. It's not an appearance focus whatsoever. But of course, you know, you look at the Olympics, the athletes aren't training for appearance or physique, and they don't use those methodologies at all. But most people would agree that they've got, you know, pretty good looking, healthy bodies, as we tend to define that in society. So that box is automatically checked. But we're looking at, from an ability standpoint, it's looking at really 3D strength and mobility fused together. It's almost like if you took Tai Chi and sport performance and yoga in motion and bodybuilding and mesh them all together, is a little bit of the experience. But in the exercises, Kim, I've looked at how can I safely set up body positions and movement patterns, and what direction the loading comes in, so that the muscles in a traditional way can't get it done on their own. Person isn't set up or exposed for injury, but the characteristics of fascia, be it force transmission or absorption or tensegrity or communication, does need to join this exercise party a lot more. And so we can call on that. And we know when we have more communication in the body, we have more, usually more stability and reactivity and muscle activation. So that it's tied into that. Yeah, I hope that gives it a little bit of a look.
I love that. And, you know, one of my questions I was going to ask you, like, what is the biggest shift you've seen in the last decade or two with the way we're thinking about the body? You know, one of my teenagers saying, why are you even studying this anymore? It's the body doesn't change. I'm like, well, you're right. You know, it has all the same contents 20 years ago as it does now, but we are thinking about movement differently. And I remember one of my professors in college, she wouldn't even want to use the word isotonic. She's like, there's always movement. Muscles never work in isolation. One muscle can never just move without an effect of another muscle, right? One muscle contracts, one muscle has to elongate. That's just factual, but I think fascia has really come up on everybody's radar in the last little while, and its importance with everything from strength to just the fact that it's innervated. We use a frequency with microcurrent that works with fascia, and it's increasing the vitality to the fascia. And I've been playing around with that with movement, and it's been mind blowing when you give the fascia a little extra juice, how that can not only improve flexibility, but strength. And I'm not sure why that is.
Yes, yes.
We're reverse engineering, as we go with microcurrent, but the fact that we can increase the vitality to fascia and it affects both strength and flexibility is profound.
Yeah, excellent. No, I can hear your passion for that in there too, and it is it's a progression forward. I think, gosh, when I think I'll make 2 points. Number one, and it's a wording that I want to avoid because I don't want it to be misleading. But there's no better way, no layman's terms, better way to express it. But I think training our fascia is like a fountain of youth from a movement capability standpoint, especially as we age, and finding ways to build better strength and balance on our feet in motion to live a healthy, active life, doing things we love that we can say, yes, I'll go do that versus no, thank you, I can't. It's our fascial system. And that's our armor, where we know our fascial system weaves and integrates and webs through multiple muscle groups across multiple joints. So without imposing, maybe 20 years ago, I wanted to lift an 80-pound dumbbell. Maybe today, maybe I can do 100. If you want to do that, there's ways to still do that. But maybe for different reasons, I'm going to pick up a 25-pound dumbbell. Well, how do I still build strength and create new brain cells and muscle hypertrophy and link my body together with that much lighter load? Well, that's considering our fascial system. But really, how do I don't care what I can do in the weight room or the clinic or anywhere. It's like, how can I express the results of that out in life or sport or playing with my kids or doing anything, right? So kind of a guideline I go to when I studied kinesiology and then coaching science, my very first cadaver study in anatomy class I looked at, with the muscle groups and joints we were looking at, the anatomy professor at university literally tried to remove the fascia as something that was just kind of in the way so we could get in and study muscles. And I know since that time, there's been all kinds of great work on healing and restoration and recovery with focus on your fascial system, your fascial lines, not a lot on performance and function and ability as well. And so when we can consider that, when I first started to look at that, there was one fact. It's I'm sort of Captain Obvious. Something stands out that's amazing about the human body, and it's like, maybe we should get curious about that. There must be more to that, because there's no function or component of the body that's there just willy-nilly for no reason. Everything has a purpose. So when I knew that, okay, from balance and strength and movement, that our muscle and brain communicates and exchanges with our sensors, receptors, picks up information. We send it through an afferent pathway to the brain, and for some parts, just to the to the spine and back, a short-term neural loop. But there's an afferent pathway of information coming to our brain, and then an efferent pathway for a motor response sent to our muscles. That's around 170 miles per hour, sharing information. But our fascial system does similar, from information it's communicating at 700 miles per hour.
Wow.
So I just needed to hear 700 miles per hour, and that it's communicating and sharing information from the muscles, from our feet to our fingertips to our brain, and all what the heck is happening in our environment, all of our body parts, 700 miles per hour. Well, I like to say that's not rocket science to think that that must be important. If it wasn't necessary and didn't play a role that can help us, it wouldn't exist.
Correct.
And if it was just kind of important, maybe it communicates at 5 miles per hour. 700 miles per hour sounds like it's a sense of urgency, like this is of highest importance.
Yes.
And then so I started to work backwards from there. And why does that happen? How does that happen? And then are there ways to leverage that and have that active in that way, impose demands it must respond to? Can we help train that up, or can we stimulate that so that we can either improve our fascia function, or we can overload it so that our brain and our muscle and our movement improves. So we can kind of point the goal in different directions. But that's that Fascial Lines course. And I think it's so powerful. People, you have folks that might lose their bench press strength and things like that, but up on their feet, they're stronger than anyone. And, our ability really for everybody and those seniors you talked about, to feel more confident that we can move more skillfully without getting injured, then, we're going to be open to participating in more things and not move so timidly. We know how to take, even walking downstairs, do we know how to load into that foot into the stair? We're squatting and rotating and reaching for a pot out of our cupboard, or do we understand how we're doing that? Every micro moment is either improper or less than optimal for our body, or it's something in our body. It's the right pattern, the right muscle sequence, etc. That our body loves to sequential fire through, etc. So a lot of our micro, I'm not like geeking out on this. It's like I'm always into working out. I just want to do what's kind on my body and helps it improve. So how do I vacuum? How do I sweep a floor? Well, I'm stepping and moving and rotating in ways that are, for now, that I believe are optimal for my human system and what my anatomy is made to do. And it's those micro. I think those add up. Does that mean 20 years? So many of my buddies, strength and conditioning coaches and therapists and trainers, well, my age, they've got knee replacements, hip replacements, and so things aggregate over time.
Yes.
And is it kind on our body and improving us, or is it contra to that and just in a tiny way we can't notice today, but it's wearing down our body? So to our fascial system, if for any goal, I think if we pay more attention or orient to how do we enhance the communication inside the body between all the points, between our ankle to our muscle, with our fascia, with our brain. And if we're focused on, it sounds like I'm a woman talking to men who haven't budged on this, is we need to communicate. It's better communication. But it is inside the body. I believe fitness and performance and injury prevention and training is about communication. I'll say that.
And that's absolutely what, I think most of our goals are in rehabilitation. We see whether it's somebody who's got the chronic pain or the athlete that just hurt its shoulder, when we're going through that return to play or getting back into those ADLs, those activities of daily living, and we're reaching that point of when you're saying it hurts when I reach back to get my seatbelt. Okay, well, let's look at that, what that range is. What are we doing over there? And there's so many patients, especially athletes, that what I always say, you've blown through all the stop signs. And they're like, what do you mean I've blown? You have compensated and morphed a range of motion or a movement pattern so suboptimally, your brain now thinks it's optimal, and we have some unraveling or some undoing to do to retrain this. So I always tell my patients, and I love saying this to my big tough men athletes, I'm like, you're strong, but you're wrong strong. And they're like, whoa, what do you mean wrong strong? I'm like, you're wrong strong. All those big muscles have taken the job for so long. And those micro little movement patterns, those stabilizers that have shut off because you didn't ask them to participate, we need everybody to participate. And I think that's where this course is going to be huge, because it is improving that communication. There's that word where we have to recommunicate with everybody, not just your favorites, everybody again in the system. So I'm so excited to take it. I want everybody, we'll put the notes here on the podcast, but can you tell everybody where they can find some more information on this Fascial Lines course?
Yeah, the most direct way, you can go to twisteducation.ca, which is a Canadian domain, twisteducation.ca. If you like it better, it's easier to remember, twistuniversity.com will also take you there. There's a website which is like our online campus, and you'll pick up on there quickly. It's about our values and our culture, you know, getting in nature, being positive, kind, but there's a lot on the science and the methodology. There's a certification page that you can scroll through, and all of the 5 learning pathways. So there'll be 20 courses to choose from. There's 3 available right now, which is fascial line training. There's the, I don't mean to be disrespectful using the word, it's the best way I know how to say it, the Bible of athletic strength, of strength and power training for sport or a 3D athletic movement. That course is there. And then there's a new course, which is functional physique. Meeting the industry a little bit where it's at with the wording, where people that are not going to come into rehab, prehab, recovery, sport training, functional training, brain training, you know, they want physique. Interesting, when they take this course, they're not doing any traditional physique exercise or method, but they'll get that result. But it's really it's a functional movement physique fusion. I think it's going to be powerful, and ironically probably be our most popular course, but it'll introduce more people to functional training as you go. And then on Instagram, I just launched hours ago, Twist Education, but my main page, where a lot of good folks from around the world, like that are on here, come together to cheer each other on and learn and share, is Coach Peter Twist on Instagram.
It's such a positive page. It always brings a smile to my face, whether it's seeing you or Bruno, your husky, just out there loving life. It's very inspirational.
Well, let's say the truth for everyone. Everyone's there for Bruno, the husky dog. He's a rescue dog. He's like an old soul who's about his 10th lifetime on Earth. He's a healer. You know, so people will visit me a bit, but I think everyone's there for the husky dog.
That's funny. I bring my shepherd puppy. She's 1.5 years to work. She's very therapeutic for a lot of my patients. It's very interesting. She doesn't like most people, true to being a German shepherd, but there's some patients, she comes out of her crate and just lays her head on the table. And it's animals are amazing. They're just
that's intuitive that they need that.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
I always wrap up every podcast with a quote. I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have a favorite quote that, or a quote of the day or something that you could share with us?
Oh, I'll share 2. One is, you know, be your best. We need to be our best when our best is needed. You know, so whatever challenges are coming in the future, if we're here, that's great. But if we can be here, we have more room to fall. We have more resiliency. But the main quote I'll give is, today I'll give everything I have. What I keep inside, I lose forever. And that means that doesn't mean so much to give our best from an effort standpoint. It means show up your best for people, each environment, be your authentic self. Everyone in here, you know, especially if you're teacher, coach, trainer, therapist, doctor, physical therapist, any type of healer, any expert working with rehabilitation, you have something special inside of you who gets meaningfulness and fulfillment helping people. And so that's a brightness inside of you. Just let that out fully and watch what happens with your path, and who cares what people think about that. I like to say, as it's kind of a mantra or a living philosophy, when I show up and there's a room of people or just out in the world, I do try my best. I want to respect every person and make every person feel comfortable, but I try my best to respect each person. I don't give a crap who likes me. You know, my only freedom I know is to be 100% myself, and then to give that to the world. And the people that don't resonate, they'll find other people to hang out with, and the people that do will find me. Your life becomes very aligned with people, patients, and clients and things too. So today I'll give everything I have. What I keep inside, I lose forever. I don't get today back tomorrow. It's like, I only gave 50%. I'm going to draw that tomorrow. That's opportunity lost. So give everything.
It's so funny. My podcast co-host, who is not here, her and I are always on this intuitive train, and she always kind of says things about 2 minutes before I want to bring it up on my list. So your quote, I just have to share this. I always prepare a quote for the podcast, and it's funny, today's one jumped out and it very much mimics what you were just saying. The quote is, "There are two ways of spreading light. One is to be the candle, the other the mirror that reflects it."
Wow.
I just love connecting with you again after all these years. You are not only an amazing educator, but human being. You're doing so many good things. I'm so excited for all your new courses. I'm one of your biggest fans. I'm proud to call you a colleague and a friend. Everybody listening, please head over to Twist University, or sorry, what was it? It was
twistuniversity.com,
twisteducation.ca, and then all the Instagram. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh gosh, it's an honor to be here with everyone. Thank you all for everything you're doing. Great to reconnect in friendship and our professional passion. So thank you kindly for having me on.
If people have any questions for Peter Twist, you can send them over to me at kim@fsmsports365.com, and I will pass them on to Peter. Maybe we'll have you back on again. We should actually bring you to the advanced one year, which would be great. And you could lecture in person in Phoenix, because people just love hearing what you have to say. So
thank you for thinking of that. And everyone have a great rest of your day.
You as well. Okay. Bye, everybody. We'll see you all next week.
Bye.
The Frequency Specific Microcurrent podcast has been produced by Frequency Specific Seminars for entertainment, educational, and information purposes only. The information and opinion provided in the podcast are not medical advice, do not create any type of doctor-patient relationship, and unless expressly stated, do not reflect the opinions of its affiliates, subsidiaries, or sponsors, or the hosts, or any of the podcast guests or affiliated professional organizations. No person should act or refrain from acting on the basis of the content provided in any podcast without first seeking appropriate medical advice and counseling. No information provided in any podcast should be used as a substitute for personalized medical advice and counseling. FSS expressly disclaims any and all liability relating to any actions taken or not taken based on or any contents of this podcast.